Panda's just going to be in the corner of the screen. That's hilarious. Well,
Oh, so cute. Mine's buried in a hole in the backyard, so.
yeah.
Mind your dog again?
You guys are
Yeah.
live.
Oh, yay.
Hey, everybody.
We're even
Hello.
early too. Um, Hi, everybody. We are some crime and thriller authors here today to talk with you guys. I'm Liao Butler, and I'm here with debut novelist Peter Malone Elliott and E.A. Aymar. So, Peter, why don't you start it off and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, totally. So, first of all, thanks so much for having us, and it's so nice to talk to all of you out there on Renee's Reading Club. Blue Ridge is my debut novel, like Lynn said. It is a psychological thriller set in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. The title kind of gives it away. About two identical twin brothers, one named Christopher and one named Killian. Killian is a burnout horse trainer, former Olympic equestrian, kind of on his last legs, metaphorically and literally. And then Christopher is the exact opposite. He's a rising star in the political world. He's running for governor of Virginia. He's got his stuff all figured out, at least on the face. Where the novel picks up, Killian is en route to go murder Christopher. But when he gets there, someone has not only beaten him to the punch, but has framed him for it. So, in the process of trying to figure out who framed him and figure out who murdered his brother, Killian gets wrapped in this really sinister political conspiracy that not only threatens the sanctity of democracy in Virginia, but also threatens to reveal this really deep, dark secret that Killian and Christopher have been trying to keep secret for years. That's the short blurb.
Yeah, it's amazing. So
Thank you, Lynn.
we'll talk more about it later. Ed.
Ed, you're up.
Oh, yeah. So, playboy, billionaire, entrepreneur, philanthropist, Jeopardy champion. I'm none of those. But I did write a book. I've written four. This is my fourth. It's called When She Left. It came out about, when was it, Lynn? 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lynn and I we're book twins. Our books came out on the same day. And it tells the story of a young couple on the run from a group of criminals. The reason they're on the run is because the woman in the couple has run off left her boyfriend for this other guy, and he's a rising criminal. Her ex-boyfriend is a rising criminal in this crime family. And the crime family hires a reluctant real estate agent / hitman to track them down. Like Peter, mine takes place it's partially in Virginia, but really the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, which is where I live and where all of my books and writing have been set. And I'm very excited to be here tonight. Lynn?
Oh, it's nighttime for you guys, right?
It is, yeah.
It is 2 o'clock my time, so I'm all confused. I am currently in Kauai. I am a thriller, upmarket, and rom-com author, Liao Butler, and I am an accidental thriller writer. I didn't mean to, but during the pandemic, I was pandemic homeschooling and accidentally wrote a thriller because I started to get stabby and started killing people in my books, and now I write thrillers. So I have joined you guys in that dark-minded thing, but I actually have a question for you guys later because you guys are so nice, but you write such dark stuff that I have questions for you. But anyway, so my book, I'm not at home. So What Is Mine just came out 2 weeks ago, along with Ed's book. This is our second time our books have come out together on the same date. And it is a thriller, a domestic thriller called What Is Mine? And it's about a 9-year-old boy and his dog that disappear from their driveway. And then the search for him makes two women's lives collide in ways that they didn't expect. And it gets a little, strange and out there. But yeah, I was very happy with this one because this was not accidental thriller. This was intentional thriller. So yeah. Hi, Renee. Thank you so much for having us here. We already started kind of blabbing away, so.
We did. And Renee, if you want us to reintroduce ourselves, we can do an abridged version if you want for people who are logging on around 7. Just let us know in the chat. And for anybody, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to put a note in the chat. I'm watching it so I can let the group know what questions there are.
Yes, I'm looking at it, and Renee does want us to reintroduce ourselves because we started before 7. So
Yeah.
Peter, why don't you take it away? It's 7
Sure.
o'clock now.
Okay. Hi everybody. Sorry if you heard this again. I'll just get the whole spiel again. I'm Peter Malone Elliott. My debut novel, Blue Ridge, came out on January 9th. It is a psychological thriller set in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia about two identical twin brothers, one of whom wants to kill the other. But when he gets there to actually murder his brother, he finds out that someone has framed him for the deed and beat him to it. So, in the process of trying to clear his name and figure out who murdered his brother, Killian, the main character, gets wrapped into this sinister political conspiracy that threatens to reveal a deep, dark secret that Killian and Christopher, the two brothers, have been trying to keep buried for a long time.
Nice.
And I am Ed Aymar. I write under E.A. Aymar. I am a essayist and short story writer and novelist. Lately I've been doing reviews for the Washington Post, which is pretty cool, although they're all very milquetoast because I don't like saying bad things about other writers. So they're all very glowing. And for my book, it came out 2 weeks ago. When She Left tells the story of a young couple on the run from criminals and the reluctant hitman / real estate agent who's hired to find them. And I worried a little bit about including a realtor / hitman. I thought it might be unrealistic, but with interest rates what they are nowadays, you need a second career, and it's really either a contract killer or Amazon delivery person. So I make a choice. There's no in between.
Nope.
Perfect. And I am Liao Butler. Renee, thank you so much for having me back on. I think I was on last year and I had no idea what I was doing. And I stared at the camera for like 7 minutes going like this. I think I've learned better now. I am now officially splitting my time between New York and Kauai and just moving into my Kauai condo. So you can see it's like empty. There's like nothing here. And I'm perched on the edge of a bar stool without a back. So if I fall out of the picture, I just toppled over. Okay. Yeah. So I have no posters up, but this is my book, What Is Mine, that just came out last week. No, I'm sorry, 2 weeks ago. And it's a domestic thriller about a 9-year-old boy and his dog that disappear from his aunt's driveway. And the search for him like collides the lives of two women who didn't know each other before and gets a little wild and crazy. And this is my second thriller. So I think it's better than the first one because the first one I, wrote by accident. So yeah. So we're so happy to be here and to be able to join these other two, especially, with a debut here, right? Ed, we have to welcome him into this crime world.
Yeah,
we do. And to properly welcome you in, we're going to ignore you and we're going to talk mostly about ourselves.
Cool. Awesome.
No, we want to know. It's very exciting being a debut writer. It's, a culmination of so much. Tell us about it. Tell us your journey.
Yeah, sure. So I started off in film and TV. I was raised up as a screenwriter. And during the pandemic, like a lot of us, I was living at home, and which is in Virginia, near the Blue Ridge Mountains. And I was taking these long, long walks looking up the Blue Ridge Mountains. And, I had always been kind of thinking about writing a novel. My mother is a novelist, and so it's kind of in the blood, and it always been kind of percolating. It was like, okay, maybe now's the time. And this idea of two twin brothers in this kind of Cain and Abel-esque dynamic was something that always intrigued me, and trying to spin that out in a psychological thriller context was something that really fascinated me. And so, like, while I was walking these picturesque but kind of spooky Blue Ridge Mountains, I decided to set it there, and then it was off to the races. Yeah.
So wow. You said you were a screenwriter.
Yeah.
What were you living in LA at the time?
I was, yeah. So I lived in LA from 2013 to 2021, and then I moved back to the East Coast in 2021. I've been living in Brooklyn ever since, and minus the pandemic stuff, that whole little thing.
Yeah.
that damn pandemic,
that small little thing.
Renee asked if we all know each other, and we actually, I know both of you, but you guys just met, right?
That's correct. Yeah. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting Ed in person. Lynn was nice enough to do the launch event for me in Brooklyn, which was wonderful. And Lynn, thank you again for doing that.
It was at a brewery with like giant cast in the background. It was so cool. Like, and it felt like you could commit a murder there, right? Like, and hide the body in one of those spheres.
Just jam it in there, and then someone sipping their beer like, oh, this tastes funny.
And Ed and I met at, was it BoucherCon? But we knew each other.
It was BoucherCon.
Yeah, we knew each other before that. We have the same editor, the same pub date last year and this year. So.
Oh wow, 2 years in a row. That's wild. Wow.
Yeah, I think I touched base with you right after our books came out last year because we were both first reads, and I was wondering how it was for you. I think that's the first time we officially corresponded.
Yes, because I didn't know you until I saw that our books came out on the same day.
Yeah, I like to creepily introduce myself to people, so that was,
Well, if you start off with the whole Playboy billionaire thing like you did before, then you're off to a strong start.
Like, and I'm none of the above.
So I want to ask Peter another question because I find your turn from screenwriting fascinating. I thought, just based off your appearance, you were about 17 years old, and apparently you were living in LA like for a while.
I'm actually 12 3/4, Ed. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I'm 30.
Not legal yet. I don't know what.
I can't even drink. We had it at a brewery and I couldn't even drink. It was a disaster. Yeah. So no, I mean, I went to film school out in LA, at Loyola Marymount, if anyone knows out there. And I was there, I was doing the whole screenwriting thing. I was writing specs. I was trying to sell them. I got one produced that's streaming on Peacock and Amazon, a few other places.
Oh wow.
Had a couple things optioned. It's a really specific lifestyle being a screenwriter in LA. But I think it served me really, really well when I transitioned to writing books because, in screenwriting, being concise and using brevity is the name of the game, right? So like in a book, you can have, as long as you want to describe something, a setting, right? Do for pages, paragraphs, whatever. In a screenplay, you have 2 sentences, if that, probably less. So especially for writing thrillers and genre pieces, it really helped me get to the point and cut to the quick in scenes and plotting and pacing and character development. So in a lot of ways, I'm really, really thankful for my screenwriting background. And it's something that, I'm always going to kind of dabble with and alternate back and forth. I haven't abandoned it completely, but for now I'm focused on writing novels. So
what about you, Lynn? What was your writing journey to your first book?
Again, I also fell into that accidentally. I'm a reader, not a writer. I've always been a reader, like huge reader. I read all the time. I used to read 5 to 7 books a week, and at the dinner table, like walking everywhere. My mom used to yell at me to put my book down. In school, everybody's telling you to read, and my mom's like, "Stop reading." So I've been a big reader, and I tried writing a book back in college, and it was awful. It was so bad. I said, "I'm never writing a book again." I put away. And I was a professional ballet and modern dancer in New York City for years, and then I became a personal trainer and fitness instructor and yoga instructor. But I lived in Manhattan for years. And then in 2013, I think, I moved out of the city to the suburbs, and I started a blog to keep people posted about what I did in the country, they called it. And even, it was suburbs, so it's not country. And people just loved it. And I was like, one day I woke up on 2015 and said, you know what, I'm going to turn these into a book. And I did. But it took me 3.5 years and 3 different books before I signed with my agent.
Oh.
So yeah, and
Really?
what about you? I'm very interested.
For me, I like asking that question. I don't like answering it because I have a very uninteresting origin story. I just I graduated college and I started a job working for a political network, and I answered the phone, and it was a very neutral network, but regardless, everybody who called just cursed at me because we were either too liberal or too conservative. It didn't matter. We got it from both sides. And then I was just I hated doing that so much that I decided I'd go home and write. And then I'd always liked writing. I studied it in college, and it became, and at that point I started to see it differently than I had in the past. And I realized that was when I was at my happiest professionally. So it just, at that point, it became something I did on a serious basis, which for me meant writing every day for a couple hours. And I still do that. So, and for other, other writers, and if there's aspiring writers out there, everybody has their different definitions of what constitutes taking it seriously. I
Sure.
don't like when people say, oh, you have to write every day, because I know great writers who don't.
Me,
So
I don't write every day.
Yeah.
you don't have, so do you write like when you have a idea and that's it, or?
Yeah, I can go months without writing a single word of my book. I'm not talking about emails and stuff. Because I can only write when I have a big chunk of time where I can sit down, because with an 11-year-old, with a young child, they're always like, mommy, I need this, or he's being driven from one to the other. So I think about it all the time, but I don't sit down. Like, for instance, I haven't written a word in about 3 weeks because I've been so busy. But once I have time, I can just sit down and bang out like 20,000 words in like a week. So
Wow.
What about you, Peter? You said you don't either?
It depends. When I'm working on a project actively, like I am now, I do write 5 days a week. But if I'm in between projects, like before I started the thing I'm working on now, when I was launching Blue Ridge and it was, I was doing the bulk of the press
okay.
run, so to speak. Yeah, no, I wasn't writing every day. No, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's about quality, not quantity, I think,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And I percolate, I call it percolating a lot in my head. So I'm always like working out, okay, so
yeah,
this character is a little flat and I'm trying to give her more depth, and I'm thinking of like scenarios. So I think about things. I don't necessarily write them down until I sit down. But
sure.
I have a question for you too, because
Okay.
I find this very fascinating. So I believe that thriller and crime writers are some of the nicest people on earth, right?
Yes, 1000%.
Right?
Yeah.
Ed's like, yeah, maybe.
Ed's
I mean, they're
lukewarm. Ed's
okay.
lukewarm.
Except for Ed. Except for Ed. And I think the reason is because when we're mad or when we're angry about something or whatever, we write it out and we either kill someone off or,
Yep.
do something bad to them, and then we feel better. So we get it out in a very healthy way. So you have some gritty, like, graphic scenes. So I assume that means you both are very nice people, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have an identical twin that I murdered and is dead. But, other than that, no.
In utero?
In utero.
You know.
No, no. Yeah, no, I
Badass.
completely agree with that. I mean, it's really interesting whenever you go to writing conferences, the people that write genre stuff and, commercial fiction, oftentimes they write the most grotesque, really detailed,
Yeah,
really, really horrifying stuff, but they're the most well-adjusted people a lot of the
right.
time. And it's a fascinating dichotomy. But yeah, I agree,
Do
1000%.
you
Yeah.
find
Yeah.
that to be true, Ed?
Yeah,
You?
for me, it's a little different because a lot of writers I know will say, I'll, if I'm mad at somebody, I'll put them in my book later. And I'm like, no, that's an important place for me. If I don't like someone, I'm not going to put them in my book. That's really
Sure.
important to me. They're not going in there, no matter what I want to do to them. That's a secret spot. So I will say that I have found crime fiction writers to be a very welcoming and inclusive
Yeah.
group, for the most part. There's always instances here or there, but nothing compared to other genres where it's so competitive. I think for me, a lot of that comes from two things. One is you meet a surprising number of eerily like-minded people, because we've all gone the same routes. We've all done close to the same routes, the same thing. We have the same goals, and crime fiction writers seem to have within the genre a really good sense of what is going to, that someone's success is going to elevate everybody else's. So if somebody does well, that's great. We need that. I mean, especially nowadays when you hear about reading audiences dwindling and books dying out and bookstores closing, et cetera.
Yeah.
We need successes and people to be talking about our books. We need, a 50 Shades of Grey that's everyone's, or, Da Vinci Code, whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a couple of questions I wanted
Oh,
to mention first. Renee had asked, always curious if thriller writers know the ending when you start writing the book. So if you guys want to answer that and just tell everybody how your books end. No.
just give
I was like,
away
wait,
the twist.
what?
Give it all away.
I was like, wait.
I can answer that first. It depends completely on the project. There are some projects where I do really, really intense, detailed chapter by chapter outlines, and then others where I kind of just freeform it. But I will say, either way I go, no matter what, there's always three things that I know, no matter what. I know the opening image, the beginning scene, whatever, the midpoint, and how it ends. So yes, the short answer to your question, Renee, is yes, I always know how it ends. Yeah, 100%.
For me, I rate in three genres. So in sorry, something just fell. In upmarket and rom-coms, I do know how it's going to end. But in thrillers, I'm just thinking back for both the books. I wanted it to end one way, and my editor said no, so I had to change it. So both times it ended like the ending surprised me. Like it just kind of came as I was writing, it came to me and just was completely different. So no, I did not know.
Yeah, my endings, I might have an idea, a general idea. I don't have, I kind of envy what Peter has with set images. I don't have those. Sometimes I'll have one, or I'll have something that really, something that sparks the book. But the ending will change for me. It doesn't hold true to the end. And partly that's because I outline fastidiously. Everything is outlined down, and I have my outline taped all around me in my office, but I don't I'll deviate with an outline. I'll play with it. So it's there. It gives me a path to follow, but I'll take other paths as the story develops.
That's fascinating. I would be honestly, if I didn't at least have an idea of the ending, I would be very intimidated. I would feel like I'm kind of just swimming in a never ending ocean with no end in sight. That's fascinating. Wow.
That's how I wrote my thrillers, swimming in an never ending with our editor Jessica telling me no, that can't end like that.
I mean, I wish Jessica, so our editor, as Lynn said, we have the same editor. She's fantastic. And I wish with the book prior to When She Left. When She Left has been, both the books were, the first book I did with the No Home for Killers and When She Left, both were well received critically. But No Home for Killers, the prior book, had a very divisive reaction to readers.
Same
and
here.
You can see that really on Amazon.
Yeah, same here with my first one. Yep.
Yeah, and I think it's because I didn't listen to Jessica, and I stuck with the ending that felt right for me. And then afterwards, once the book's out there, you look at it differently. And that ending that seemed right, you're like, well, maybe I should have done something different.
Could there be an argument though that if a piece of art, book, movie, whatever is divisive, that means in a way that you're doing something right because you're causing conversation, you're challenging people?
Right.
That would be the devil's advocate argument, I would say to you, Ed. Do you agree? No?
No, not with this. I mean, sometimes yes, if that's your goal, I think. But if the criticisms are criticisms you agree with,
sure,
then no. Yeah. So when I read, the knocks that people had on that book, I thought, I think you're right. You're making a good point. It's kind of like going to like a writing group or something, and you get feedback, and you're like, you know what, you're right, you're not wrong. Sometimes you get that feedback and you're like, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about. But other times, if they strike something that's true to you, sure. Yeah. With When She Left, that hasn't happened, which is nice, but it has a cheerier ending, I think. So
yeah,
that helped. We had another question. What inspired each of your stories? Oh, Lynn's mad.
Oh,
sorry. I had to go open the door because it was so hot. I started to
Lynn
sweat.
was furious by that question.
I ran away. Peter, you better start because I have to gather myself,
Well, I mean, I already kind of did answer it with the brothers and the Cain and Abel aspect. So, I mean, like, Ed, why don't you, I'll throw it to you.
For me, it was, there was something specific that inspired it, and it was that I really wanted to. I was reading a lot of thrillers, and I read a lot of crime fiction is mainly what I read, and not really, I mean, by choice, but also I just don't have time to read much else outside of my genre. And I was tired of joyless crime fiction, and I was tired of a lot of gritty crime fiction, which is what I'd written prior to that. Isn't there's humor in it, but there's not a lot of joy. And I wanted to write a love story. I wanted people to read the book and think that it was an honest love story. So I wanted to have, once I realized that, once that was set, and I realized that had to be true for all the characters, they all had to have an honest, authentic sense of love. the story really started coming together at that point.
Awesome.
What about
Nice.
you?
So all my books are inspired by things I either hear in life or happened in life. So this book about the missing child, we fostered dogs during the pandemic, and there was but he was 8 at the time, cried every time the dog left. And to the point where like one couple, they're really nice couple, said, I try to give the dog back to him and said, no, you keep the dog. And we're like, no, he wants, to find a home for him. And they were so nice and they were like, we love him. He's so great. He's like Buddha. He's, all this stuff. And then they sent him this big box of stuffed dog toys afterwards to give to his other dogs. And I was like, oh, that's so nice of them. And then in my head, I was going, but what if they're too nice? What if they come back one day and see him in the yard playing with the dog and just take him and he just disappears? And that's where the story came from.
Wow.
So they don't know that I use them as inspiration. So
They do now.
Yeah,
Yep.
do any of you or all of you have psychology in your background?
I do. I was a psychology double major in college. I was psychology and dance. And my mom is like, what are you going to do with that degree?
I'm going to write books, obviously.
She's like, oh, what are you going to be, a dancing psycho or something? So she didn't understand what psychology was.
Sure.
But yes, I did study psychology, and I did a lot of like in-depth like analysis of like how people think and what their backgrounds inspire them, whatever. So yeah.
I do not have a formal psychology background, but I'm a lifelong therapy goer and I've done a lot of self-work in that way. So there you go. But also on a more serious note, I mentioned my mother is a novelist, a New York Times bestselling novelist, believe it or not. Just L.M. Elliott, go buy her books. So I watched the way that she researched books, and she does mainly historical fiction, the way she breaks down characters and just the amount of work and just the digging in on character bios and just fleshing out these characters. And I saw that from a young age, and that really kind of planted the seed of wanting to get into the minds of other people and see their perspective and take them on journeys. So that was kind of the linchpin for why I wanted to write psychological stuff. Yeah.
Right. I, like Lynn, I studied psychology in college for my first 2 years, and then I failed out. And they told me to I begged the school to take me back, and
Oh
they
my God.
said, we will, but you have a few conditions. You have to get a certain GPA, you have to go to study help, like 3 times a week, and you have, for the love of God, you've got to switch majors.
This is not for you.
Yeah, no. So I did, and the problem was I was doing fine in psychology, but I started getting statistics and math stuff, and I was like, this is not what I envisioned. And I went to English, which I thought was kind of the
Nice.
easy way out. But it was studying English where I started realizing, oh my gosh, this is actually really hard. And the psychology the reason I was interested in psychology, I found in English.
Nice.
Awesome. Yeah. Was there a particular novel or work of nonfiction that really kind of sparked the lifelong interest, or is it just kind of just a snowball effect?
There are so many. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't think there's one. I think if there is really one, the first one that comes to mind, so I guess that's the one, it would be James Baldwin's Giovanni's Room, which I thought
read
was, yeah, I thought it was just so powerful. And the blurb on the cover, it was just 2 words. It was from like the Times or New Yorker, and it said, emotionally violent. And I thought that something about that
Great.
was so true, but also what I wanted to write. And
Yeah.
that's just sort of like, what about for each of you?
Ooh. I asked a question that I don't know if I have the answer. Lynn, you go first, and I'll think of my answer.
I didn't hear the question.
Was there go ahead, Peter, it was your question.
I just asked Ed if there was like a work of fiction that really sparked his lifelong love of the word and wanting to get into storytelling, essentially.
Actually, I read, like I said, I read a lot, and I read across genres. I read nonfiction, fiction, I read cookbooks, like everything. But the reason why I started writing was in 2013, my life imploded, like everything that you could think, my health, my life, like everything just imploded. So it was the works of Liao Moriarty who's got me like through that time. And she's an Australian author. very popular, writes kind of like suspense, women's fiction slash, suspense, whatever. And it's really funny. She writes very universally. So even though she lives in Australia, someone from, like I was born in Taiwan and lived in the United States, I could relate to her. And I was like, you know what? I want to do that for Taiwanese American people. Like I want to write stories that people, maybe they feel alone or they're at a low point of their life that, and that they can connect with and be like, somebody gets it. So she actually is the reason why I started writing.
Great answer.
So we have.
Honestly,
Oh, go ahead, Peter. Sorry.
no, sorry. Just honestly, for me, it probably started where it starts. It started with film. Probably the two films that I watched that really sparked the interesting, gritty crime thrillers and that type of storytelling was The Departed and Talented Mr. Ripley. Which Talented Mr. Ripley is a book, obviously. But in terms of modern day authors that I love and that I think are just present company aside, that I think are amazing. I think if anybody hasn't read Sean Cosby, S.A. Cosby yet, go read him immediately. Go read Razorblade Tears tonight. put down the computer and go and read him. We're in a really wonderful age of psychologically driven crime thriller fiction. It's a really exciting time to be in that genre. So I'm honored to be in the conversation of that genre at all.
Nice.
We had a question. I love this question. Can you talk about what it was, how it was getting your first book published? What I love about this question too is that this is such a great talk about the process, but also talk about what it was like when you found out you were going that book that your book was going to be published. Lynn, do you want to go
take
first?
it first, or?
So like I said, it took me 3 books and 3.5 years of querying in order to sign with an agent. And I knew I wanted to go with a traditional route because for me, it was about having the books out, distributed, everywhere that books were sold, that that you could get it at libraries and stuff, which actually a lot of that you can do self-publish now, but I don't have a background in marketing and publicity, so I wanted a publisher. And so it was just a lot of banging my head against a hard wall. I had no idea what I was doing. I'd never taken a writing class in my life. I didn't know how to query. So it was a lot of like trial and error. And it wasn't until I found my writing community on Twitter, actually. That's where I found my critique partners, the writing groups that I belong to. I started to enter all the pitch wars and Rev Pit and all DV Pit and whatever Pit, Mad. And that's when I learned how to actually write a book and how to write a query. So it took me 3.5 years and I was about to give up when I decided to just take that third. So I took the first book and rewrote it as my third book. And that was the one that got me an agent. And I still remember I was at the vet's office holding my little, I had a sausage, a little hot dog at the time, a little wiener dog, Dachshund. And I'm holding her in the room and I'm reading my my email. And she says, I would like a phone call. And I literally dropped my dog. But thank God I was standing in front of the table. She just fell on the table. I was like, oh my God, Pino, I'm so sorry. Like, oh my God, I'm getting and I was like dancing around and the vet comes in. She's like, are you okay? Yeah. So it was very exciting.
That's an amazing
and then she sold a book in 5 months. So and I was making meatballs and the meatballs went flying across the room and my dogs got it. So it was great for them.
That's amazing. For me, it was about 3 years all in. So Blue Ridge is the first book I've ever written. I started writing it at the beginning of 2021. I finished it at the beginning of 2022. I sent it out to about 100 agents. None of them, I got some, oh, this is good, but not for us type things. And that went on for about 8, 9 months, 7 months, maybe. And I was starting to get frustrated and I was like, okay, maybe I should just put this on the shelf or the drawer and start on something else. But I did some research, and one of the really cool things about the publishing industry in comparison to the film and TV industry is that there are really good traditional small presses that take unagented submissions. That's a thing that does not exist in film and TV. Production companies will not look at unagented things. So I did my research and I submitted Blue Ridge to about a dozen or so traditional small presses and indie presses, and I got 2 offers within 2 weeks.
Wow.
And so I ended up going with Level Best Books, which does a lot of really great crime fiction. And they're DMV based. They're in Maryland, so that was a nice little add-on too. And it was a really valuable lesson for me in the sense that I tried to do the the traditional thing of, getting an agent and selling it to the big five. And that was the thing in my head. But if I kind of looked at it off center and I went and I kind of reverse engineered the process, that's how I got the result. And that was just a fascinating lesson to learn. But in terms of like the emotional, aspect, it was a very, very surreal thing, getting the contract, signing it, and feeling like, okay, in, a year and a half, whatever it was, time, I'm going to be a published author. That's my brain kind of stopped working for a good 10 minutes. I didn't drop my dog. You can see her. She's in the corner there. She's still alive. But yeah. Ed, what about you?
Are you sure she's alive, or are you just creepily keeping her
Honestly,
around?
she
hasn't
could be
moved for
dead.
a while.
I mean, Panda. Yeah, there you go. There are eyes. Okay.
So for me, I was just at a bar, and there was an editor next to me, and I wrote an idea on a cocktail napkin, and he was like,
Wow.
250,000.
And that worked for you.
That
Yeah,
Perfect.
was
that was
it.
it.
Yeah.
That was it.
And 2 weeks later, I had a book. No, it took me an embarrassingly long amount of time. I started writing in 97. I said seriously in 98, maybe 97. And I didn't get published till the mid 2010s. And it was, and for one thing, I'm not a fast, I wasn't that fast writer at the time. And I also didn't know what I was doing. So I was just, but that was kind of wonderful in a way, just to learn and take your time with it. And I wasn't in a rush. And there were some, like some successes, like I landed an agent in the mid 2000s who was with a really great literary agency, but we didn't sell the book. We parted amicably. And then I kept writing. I got a master's during that time because I was like, well, if this doesn't work out, I want to do something else. And then I had 2 books published with a very, 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 very small micro press. And I didn't, those books are out of print, which is good because they were not very good. But they got me a foot in the door. And from that, I met my agent. And then we published with a small press, and then a mid-sized press, and then with Thomas and Mercer. And it was, so for me, like the big moment was probably when Thomas and Mercer offered because I really hadn't made my agent any money, and she stood by me for a long time. And one time I asked her, I was like, we got a royalty statement before T&M, and I was like, so if you want to drop me, I kind of get it. And she was like, never a question. She's like, I believe in your writing. And
Oh,
That's
when
a great agent.
yeah, and when she said that, I was just like, I told her during that phone call when she sent me a text. She's like, call me right away. And she's like, we have an offer. And I was like, I mean, I didn't cry, but I came damn close. I was like, you've done so much for me. So
Yeah.
that was that was nice. And my
That's
wife
amazing.
and family too. They're them too, but
yeah.
Secondary though. I have a question for you too, actually, if there aren't any viewer questions. As two authors that have had really amazing careers, and you have such longevity and published multiple things, for someone like me who's still new, obviously, what kind of pearls of wisdom do you have for me in order to have a long-lasting career?
Publishing sucks.
Yeah.
Let me just put it. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It sucks. When I
It's tough,
thought
yeah.
that I got an agent and I got a traditional publishing deal, my first 2 books were Penguin Random House. I thought I had it made. I thought like I never have to go on submission again, that people are just going to keep paying me to write books. And it's been an uphill struggle. Like,
Yeah.
this is my 5th book that came out, but I've had, I think, about 3 or 4 manuscripts that died on sub. Meaning it went out to the publishers and didn't get picked up. And it's like, no matter how good you do, they still find reasons. Like it's getting harder and harder for published authors to continue publishing. And I'm fine because now that I've, into my 5th book, I'm talking to people who are ahead of me who cannot sell another book, and they're at a crossroads and they don't know what to do. So it's terrifying. Like I'm like, is this my last book? Like, am I ever? And like Ed, I was so lucky to find a really amazing agent who believes in me. Because after the 4th book died, I was like, I think she's gonna drop me. And she's like, no, I believe in your writing. Like people need to read your stories. They're important. And she's still out there fighting for me. And I said to her, I was like, I feel like I'm never gonna sell another book. And she goes, you will. It might not be as fast as we like it, but you will.
Yeah.
So I think the only thing you can do is just to keep writing. And I'm, she has something that she's working on with me, and I'm writing another book now. And I do it because I love to write. I have so many stories in my head that are just begging to come out on paper, and I'm going to write them and trust that the universe will find it a home somewhere, even if it's like at the bottom of a dumpster or something.
The bottom of a lake.
Bottom of a lake, yeah.
Ed, what about you?
Yeah. I mean, every writer you meet is going to be a workaholic. Like I said, you get into this like community of people, and it's supportive because everybody's sort of like you, and I mean, they're all the hardest workers they know, and that's not an exaggeration. And their main competition is probably with themselves, just like us. But for me, my thing is I have to do other stuff. The first time I went on submission, I went with that agent in the mid 2000s. We went on submission, and at any moment, the thing is that's so maddening about submission, and you guys know this so well. At any moment, your life can change.
Exactly.
At any moment, you can get that phone call, and your agent and tell you, look, we have a deal, and your life may not change, right? It may, and especially now that we've published, we know it's not going to change, but this thing you've been working on is going to be out in the world, and as submission goes and it goes on, and as you keep waiting, it becomes more precious to you. And I think for me it was really important when I wrote it that first time, because I went through a massive sadness waiting, because you're like the first week you're like so excited, and then it fades, and then you start thinking it's not going to happen. I needed something else. I needed small rewards. I needed to write other stuff. And for me, that's the thing. I'm never comfortable having your eggs in one basket. I need to diversify. I need stuff spread around. So and especially between novels, I feel like I have to keep my name out there, because that's what publishing is.
Do you want to hear a secret?
Please.
Would you like to hear a secret? I have been on continual sub, meaning like I have not stopped being on sub for 2 years and 11 months.
Wow.
I mean, because you write in multiple genres.
I write in multiple genres. So even though I've had sold sub, I have like literally been, I think I was, there was only a month during Christmas that we stopped and then started again after the new year. But I literally from March of 2021, what year are we in? 21, 2, 3.
Where are we? What's going on?
I don't know what year we're. So yeah, so from March of 2021, we have been on continuous sub. I mean, we obviously sold stuff during that time, but so I have been living in a constant state of what Ed is describing. Like every day, I'm like checking, like obsessively checking my email, and I've learned I have to step away. This is why I teach fitness and yoga. I like to torture people, and I like to own them to death, and then I also sub. And I have my dogs. Like without my dogs, I think I would just be a big mess on the floor somewhere.
It's really the hard thing about writing, I think, to me, and you, Peter, you know as well from screenwriting, so this isn't anything new to you, is there for me, the hardest part was in your job. If you work really hard, you may not get that promotion, but you'll get recognition. You may get a raise, and eventually you will if you work really hard. In school, that's kind of how you're taught, right? You study hard, you get good grades. There's a work and reward, right? In writing, that's not the case, and that is deadening to realize at first that you can work as hard as you want, and it may not happen. And that's that. I mean, there's other routes. You can self-publish. You can, there may be other ways to go about it. But if you have your heart set on one thing, it may, like for me, when I started writing, I wanted, there wasn't really self-publishing. At that point, it was just vanity publishing, and self-publishing wasn't a thing. So, or at least what it is now. So I never had, I never thought of another option. And I still like traditional publishing because it opens so many more doors, and there's so much that you don't have to do as a self-published writer. But if that's your route, it just may not happen.
Well, let me tell you, so I did self-publish my 4th book because we couldn't sell it. And my agent wanted to know if I wanted to go out to the smaller presses. And I said, you know what, if we're going to do that, I'd rather just self-publish, because I just wanted to try it. Do you want to know what my royalty statement was for last month?
Yeah, I very much.
$16.13. And then this
lavish
month,
lifestyle
so far,
of the
I have
writers.
made $17. So obviously I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to self-publishing, but so don't listen to my advice.
Let me take a.
There are
Oh, go
so
ahead.
many people. Sorry, I was just gonna say it is really. I mean, I don't know a lot about self-publishing, but it seems like there are people that do it well, do it really, really
Yes.
well. They make a
And
really good living at
they
it.
know
It's
what they're
just
doing. Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's just we live in a, I mean, the kind of traditional model of publishing is crumbling a little bit, but there are so many other avenues that are opening up, like really cool indie presses and small presses. So
Mhm.
I think, even though what you guys said is all true, and thank you for the advice. I do think this is actually kind of an exciting time to be in publishing. Believe it or not, I'm trying to have a little bit of optimism, a little bit.
Good.
We'll see how it goes.
You need that if you want to be in publishing. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I think
yeah,
I think you're right. I think we're in a different. I mean, I want to write someday a big essay about this, and
yeah,
but I'm probably not going to. I think we're in like a new age in
yeah,
writing, and I think this is like how people have like you have romanticism, realism, modernism, postmodernism. I think we're in an age right now that hasn't been identified, and it's really an age of identity. I
yeah,
think that's what people are reading. I think the growth of diverse writers, I think, is a part of that. I
yeah,
think the growth of and acceptance of LGBTQ writers,
yeah,
all of that is coming. And I feel like if you're not writing a book that doesn't really delve into the psychology of your character and where they come from, it's going to be a harder sell. And I know writers who've written very traditional mysteries and thrillers that would have sold, 10 years ago or were selling 10 years ago. And they didn't have a lot under the surface, but they were compelling stories. And that was what they specialized in. Now it's really like after I think partly psychological thrillers and their boom from Gone Girl, we're still writing
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
And
It's sorry, Ed.
no, no, I'm done. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, just adding to that. I mean, I mean, there was the whole streaming bubble in film and TV in like 2013, 2014 when Netflix and Amazon became. I feel like that's kind of the age we're in for publishing now. I think we're kind of there's something pretty big on the horizon coming in terms of just kind of completely transforming the industry. So it's exciting, I think.
I mean,
But
I think we're all going to
what do
be
I
out
know?
of jobs because of AI, but sure.
Yeah. On that cheery note.
Well, we have a couple of other. Hey, Lynn, there's a question for you. Do you keep your name for each genre?
me?
You.
I do because so my agent said to me, and you know it's it's funny because you would think my agent would tell me to get a pen name, but she said because I'm a woman of color and it's already so hard for me to get my name out there, I would dilute my brand if I start making up different names for each
Mm.
genre. And when we went from upmarket fiction to thriller, Jessica never once even asked me to change my pen name. She just said, "Nope, you could go whatever you want." So we kept that. When I did the rom-com, I did drop my maiden name. No, I'm sorry. I dropped my married name, Butler. So I just became Lynn Liao, just because rom-com was a little different from thriller and upmarket. Because a lot of my
Mhm.
upmarket has thriller aspects. There's always like a mystery and some big twist. So we dropped the Butler from romance just to differentiate, but I'm still Lynn Liao, so that if you search for me, all 5 books still show up. So that was why I didn't change it. But yes, a lot of people have been encouraged to because of low sales number or whatever, but I haven't had to yet. So
Nice.
So there's a comment and a question. The comment first. You three are so charming, real, and fun, especially Ed. Oh, thank you, Stephanie. That's
Ah,
really
I'm
nice.
there
sure
you
I'm
go.
Yeah.
sure I said that.
Yeah, that's really sweet of you. You didn't have to say
Yeah,
it.
Ed, you're so nice.
And there's another question here. I think this is really good, and we can answer it. It would tie into other books, and we should really talk about our books right now. And we'll do that as we're gearing up towards the end. But there's a question here: what else inspires your work? And for that, we've all written other things, fiction, other fiction projects. Is there something that inspired one of those projects that you'd like to share?
Sure, yeah. So the one of the movies that I wrote, that's the one that's on Amazon and Peacock, is called Wired Shut. It's a home invasion horror thriller where the main character's jaw is wired shut and he can't speak. The genesis of that was my partner at the time was having the same jaw wired shut surgery at the time, and I was taking care of her and feeding her through a tube and nursing her and whatnot. And being a thriller writer, I was like, what what would this look like in a movie? That's interesting. And then it kind of just went from there. So like, I don't know what that says about me, but you know.
That is a really good inspiration story. When you started cackling, I knew right away it was going to be something good.
You start cackling.
What about you, Lynn?
So my first thriller was inspired because my husband had just bought a house on a lake. And we lost the house. We put a bid on it, but somebody else already got it. So we spent the 3 months looking for another house and couldn't find anything on the water that we wanted. And we finally saw that this house was still on the market. And our agent said, if you want this house, come in at your highest offer because the buyer has already been turned down twice for a mortgage and is about to ask for a third mortgage. So we did. We're so excited. We came in and we got the house. And then after we moved in, I kept seeing this white car drive by in front of our house, and it would just stop in front of the house. And I was like, I was convinced it was the people that we took the house from, and that they were coming back to spy on us, and they were going to kill us and take over our house. And I kept saying to my husband, like, Jim, oh my God, they're spying. He's like, no, Lynn, don't be silly. And I was like, look at that car that it's just standing there. And every time I looked, you couldn't see the person because they would duck down, you know? And this happened for a week. He didn't believe me. So then 3 weeks later, he goes, Lynn, oh my God, there's a white car parked in front of our house. And it's like somebody's staring at us. I'm like, see, they're coming to kill us. And I was convinced that the person that we stole the house from wanted revenge. And that was the premise for someone else's life.
Wait. You can't end the story there. Who was in the car? Who was in the car?
I have no idea. I never found out. But in my head, they followed me from New York to Kauai. They knew way too much about me. And during a storm, I let her in, and we find out that she was a woman that I stole the house from. So yeah, I don't know. I have no idea to this day who it was.
Wow. Okay.
So tell me, so we're winding down here, and I want to Renee asked if we can share what's next. I want to actually ask a second question with that. Can you give us a reason? Give us your favorite thing about your current book and why readers will like it, and then what you're working on next.
I like that.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Lynn,
you want to go first?
I think you should start, Ed.
Yeah, Ed, you go first.
Okay.
Ed should start.
So for me, with When She Left, I really, like I mentioned, I wanted to write a story that was about love. And all of my books prior to this had women as the protagonist. This is the first book I've written where men comprise the majority of the POVs. And with that, I really wanted to show what it's like, how men react to losing something important to them. And in this case, it's love. They each lose it in the form of women. The three men who really steer the plot all lose these, or are in danger of losing these women precious to them. And I wanted to write about that. I wanted to write about the reactions they would have. And because of that, it just felt different for me. It felt very very personal in that sense. Not that I've ever lost anybody. I've always dumped them, but and then next, I have another book. I usually don't talk about what I'm writing next, and I won't now, but I have another novel that I'm putting together. I will say that I think I used to be classified really as hard-boiled as a writer, not a person. And then I think I'm moving. My books have been gradually moving from more violent and gritty to more psychological thriller, and that's the next book I think is really solidly in that subgenre.
Nice.
I
Awesome.
can't wait. Yeah.
Awesome. Exciting. Lynn?
So what I liked about this is I came up with this twist that was like, I think it was really good. And it was because I was delving into like what happens when someone has a psychotic break. And so the twist in the book, I was like, it just came to me one day. And then the ending, and then my agent said to me, Lynn, you have just plotted the perfect murder and your husband should be very scared. And when she said that, I was like, yes, I finally figured out how to write a thriller. And I did tell my husband, and he was not scared. So, but so I am actually working. I actually have 2 books in the works right now. They're both, one is done, the other is almost done. One is an upmarket fiction called The Fourth Daughter, and it's about it's a dual point of view from 1950s Taiwan to present in Taiwan, and it's about woman whose daughter was stolen from her by her husband at 18 months old and given away as a future bride for another couple. And she thinks she sees her daughter like 63 years later and asks her granddaughter to come to Taiwan to help her find this woman. And it deals with the White Terror and the martial law periods of Taiwan when they were under the KMT rule. So it's a lot of history that I, as a Taiwanese American, didn't know about until recently. And I think it's a very important book, and I'm really hoping my agent can sell it. So if you guys like my books, go put reviews on so that, you know, people will buy the books. And then I'm working on another thriller called The Deadly Book Club, and it's about 5 influencer book, like really top book influencers who have a virtual book club. And during a meeting, their video cuts out, but they can hear the sound, and one of them is killed while the others listen, and you have to figure out.
Cool.
That's
That
really
sounds
good.
cool. And yeah, both of those sound amazing. Um, the thing I really enjoyed writing about Blue Ridge the most was its dueling first-person POVs between the two brothers, Killian, the former Olympic equestrian turned horse trainer, and then Christopher, the rising star politician, and figuring out how to balance the voices of the two identical twin brothers, because it was a tricky yet really rewarding thing, because they have to be similar because they're twins, right? But they also have to be different enough to be distinct and make the story move. And that was a really rewarding challenge that I think I did well. Although you read it and tell me if I did. And I also, you know, I got to lean into the Virginia Southern noir stuff, which is one of my favorite subgenres, and that was a lot of fun to do too. In terms of what's next, like Lynn, I have 2 books in the pipeline. One is done, and I'm shopping around now. It's the start of a series. I hope it's essentially Home Before Dark meets Barbarian set in Yosemite National Park. Home Before Dark, the Riley Sager book, and Barbarian, the film. If you guys have seen those and read those, and I hope that's the start of an ongoing series. So we'll see. And then the book that I just started working on now, like Ed, I don't really love talking about stuff I'm still kind of working on, but it is, I'll say this, I was a former college soccer player, and it is like a whiplash psychological thriller drama set in the world of college soccer, is what I'm comfortable saying.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much to everybody who tuned in. Thank you so much to Renee for having us.
Thank you,
And
Renee.
we all need a big thank you to Anne Marie,
Yes.
who is
Superstar.
our superstar PR agent for all 3 of us, who helped set this up and has been terrific for all of us. So
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Anne Marie. And thank you
She's
to everyone
hiding,
that's tuned in.
yeah, she's hiding behind the scenes, but she's here. Right? Yeah, thank you so much, Renee, for having us again and having us here.
And thank you to everyone that's watching and tuning in, and go buy our books and leave us good reviews on Goodreads.
Thanks so much, everyone. Have a good night.